Good evening, everybody. Welcome to church. Let's all stand and worship the Lord together. Oh, just one word. You calm the storm that surrounds me. Just one word, the darkness has to retreat. Just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes were open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that God can't do. Oh, just one word, you heal what's broken inside me. Just one word, and you revive every dream. And just one touch, I feel the power of heaven. And just one touch, my eyes were open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes the way. There's nothing that God can't do. Oh, there's nothing that God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes the way. There's nothing that God can't do. Oh, we believe, I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power. All right, you sing it. Here we go. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, hands that once were chained, now lifted high in praise. Look where I'm standing now. Look where I'm standing now. I stand on the chain break, miracle make, powerful name of Jesus. On the body raised, prodigal saved, powerful name of Jesus, yeah. Led by your mighty hand into the promised land. Look where I'm standing now. You carried the cross for me. Now I am a child of the King. Oh, look where I'm standing now. Look where I'm standing now. And I'll stand on the chain break, miracle make, powerful name of Jesus. On the body raised, prodigal saved, powerful name of Jesus. Hallelujah, I'm free. Hallelujah, I'm free. Jesus, my Savior, rescued. Hallelujah, I'm free. Hallelujah, I'm free. Jesus, my Savior, rescued. Hallelujah, I'm free. Hallelujah, I'm free. Jesus, my Savior, rescued. Hallelujah, I'm are so grateful to be in your presence this evening. Just pray that you would open up our hearts and our ears to receive your word. Just pray that you be glorified through all that we do, that we walk out of here different than we came in. Help us to live a life that reflects you, Jesus. We love you, and it's in your Son's holy name that we pray. Amen. Hey, before you take a seat, go ahead and say hi to somebody next to you.
Good evening, everybody. Who's glad to be in God's house tonight? It's good to see you guys. Well, my name is Austin. I am one of the pastors here on staff, and typically Monday nights is our young adult service, and so we are glad to open it up to everyone tonight. So tonight, we're all young adults. So feel free just to be in that spirit, just feeling young and feeling good and feeling fresh. So we're glad to have you all here tonight. A couple of announcements, and then I will introduce our special guest speaker for tonight. Young adults, our night of worship is next Monday, so don't come here. Go downtown to the Tally Ho Theater. Doors open at 6:30. Worship will start at 7, and we're going to have an hour and a half, just the time of worship. And we'll be on the town green afterwards as well, just hanging out, fellowship. So invite your friends. Again, come on out next Monday night. We'll be downtown Leesburg in the Tally Ho Theater for our night of worship. Doors open at 6:30. Also letting you know that in a couple of weeks, on Monday, August the 8th, we are having special guest Seth Dillon. He is the CEO of the Babylon Bee, and we're going to be having a fun question and answer time with Seth Dillon, predominantly on the topic of Christianity and cancel culture. The Babylon Bee is a satirical news source, lots of fun stuff coming out from the Babylon Bee. And now really, reality, the craziness of our world, it's difficult for them to make stuff up now. They're just kind of reporting the reality of our world. And so Seth Dillon is going to be joining us Monday, August the 8th. That's going to be a fun time as well. Also, if you would like to be baptized, our next baptism is August the 31st. It is a Wednesday night. And so it's going to be a baptism night. And if you've never been baptized, but you have put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, baptism is a way that we identify that we are followers of Jesus. And so if you would like to be baptized on August the 31st, you can sign up on our website or just come to the chapel that night beforehand and get your t-shirt and get in line. And we are excited to have baptisms. If you're not getting baptized, come on out and just celebrate with those making that decision. To let you know the format of our service, Dr. Frank Turek is with us. He's going to be giving a presentation, and then we're going to have a portion of a Q&A time. We're going to both have mics on the floor for live questions. If your question maybe takes a little bit longer to explain, or there needs some context behind your question, then feel free to come down and ask your question live. We also have the text-in questions available, so you can, even now as Dr. Frank Turek is giving his presentation, you can be texting in your questions to 703-844, if we could have that number up on the back wall or something. And we'll flash the number back up as well during the Q&A time. But you can text them into 703-844-9969. I'll mention the number again if you forget, but have your questions ready, and we'll also have questions available via text if you're a little bit mic shy and you don't want to come up to the front. After the service, we do have some refreshments, some ice cream sandwiches, so feel free to hang out, stay a little while, and enjoy some fellowship time. But now to our guest speaker. I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Frank Turek to us. Amazing leading apologist, has written several books equipping the Christian church on how to defend the faith, goes to numerous high schools and college campuses and churches just to help equip us on how to defend the Christian faith, specifically when it comes to other religions and atheism. He was in the Navy, so I call him Maverick. That's kind of my nickname for him. But would you help me welcome Dr. Frank Turek to the stage?
Thanks, brother. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Thank you. Let's go back to September 29th, 2006. That's when Petty Officer Michael Mansour is a United States Navy SEAL operating in Ramadi, Iraq, Mansour is standing on a roof in Ramadi, and he's standing in front of a doorway to this roof. He has two Navy SEAL teammates lying in the sniper-prone position next to him. They've already taken AK-47 fire and a rocket-propelled grenade, but they're not exactly sure where the enemy is. There's a bit of a lull in the fighting. Insurgents have blocked off the streets in Ramadi, and there's someone on the loudspeaker in the town mosque yelling, "Kill the Americans!" As Mansour and his team are looking for the next attack, an insurgent from an unknown location throws a grenade up on the roof. It hits Mansour in the chest, and it falls to his feet. Due to the length of the throw, there's no opportunity to pick it up and throw it back. He has only a split second to make a decision. He can leap through the doorway behind him and save himself, but if he does, his two teammates lying at his feet will surely die. Mansour yells, "Grenade!" But instead of jumping backward to save himself, he jumps forward, chest first, onto the grenade. It detonates. 30 minutes later, 25-year-old Michael Mansour is dead. His two teammates lying on the roof receive only minor injuries because Mansour's body muffled the blast. One of the survivors said at Mansour's funeral, "Mikey looked death in the face that day and said, 'You will not take my friends, I will go in their stead.'" I've never seen a United States president cry until April of 2008. That's when President George W. Bush invited Mansour's parents into the East Room of the White House to give them their son's Medal of Honor posthumously. The president couldn't even get through the citation without breaking down. Since then, Mansour's high school in Garden Grove, California, built a new stadium. They named it Michael A. Mansour Memorial Stadium. The golden trident insignia that the SEALs wear dominates the 50-yard line. January 2019, North Island, California, just outside of San Diego, the United States Navy commissioned the USS Michael Mansour, the newest guided missile destroyer in the fleet, Zumwalt class. This is Mansour's mother, Sally, being escorted onto the ship, named in honor of her fallen son. Now, why did they do this? Because Michael Mansour literally sacrificed himself to save his friends. There's no greater love than to sacrifice yourself to save your friend, said Jesus of Nazareth before he went to the cross. Michael Mansour sacrificed himself to save his friends. The question is, would anyone sacrifice himself to save you? And the answer is, someone already has. His name is Jesus of Nazareth. But in today's culture, many people don't think the story's true. They think it's invented. After all, it was written down by religious people. We know religious people tend to embellish things. And it's got miracles in it, like a resurrection. How many people in this room have ever seen someone rise from the dead after being dead for 3 days? Yeah, I didn't think so. Yet if you're a Christian, you have to believe something that none of us have ever seen. How rational is that? Well, I actually think it's quite easy to show that Christianity is true. You only need to answer 4 questions. In other words, if you investigate these 4 questions, I think you'll realize that the answer to these 4 questions is yes. And if the answer to these 4 questions is yes, then Christianity is true. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. I need sound for this, Daphne. It's cool sound. There you go. Now that is some pretty grooving music, isn't it? Yeah. That's actually from our TV show on every Wednesday nights on DirecTV channel 378. If you don't have DirecTV, it's on Roku. Just look for NRB on Roku for National Religious Broadcasters. If you don't have DirecTV and you don't have Roku, it's on this new technology sweeping Loudoun County right now. It's called the internet. You guys heard of this? Yeah, it's actually broadcast on our website, crossexamine.org. At that time. We're also on radio every Saturday morning. There is a station here somewhere in D.C. It's the American Family Radio Network. When is that, Pam? Do you know what that is? It's 91.3, but if you can't listen to it then, it's podcasted. It's called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And what we do is we present evidence for Christianity, and we cross-examine ideas against it based on our website there, crossexamine.org. Now, why are these the four questions? Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament. And this is going to serve as our outline here tonight and also Wednesday night. Tonight, we're going to try and get through one and say half of number 2 there, and then we'll do miracles and the New Testament on Wednesday night, Lord willing. But let's ask the question, does truth exist? Why is that important? Well, you hear people saying there's no truth. You got your truth. I got my truth. All truth is relative, right? Well, if there's no truth, Christianity can't be true. Of course, if there's no truth, then atheism can't be true either, right? In fact, if there was no truth, would you ever go to school? Would you ever go to church? Would you be ever to call somebody out on a lie if there was no truth? No, lies presuppose there's truth, right? Of course there's truth. We're going to cover that here tonight. Second question, does God exist? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if there's no God, but I hope to show you tonight and Wednesday night that there really is a theistic God. That's a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator who created all things and sustains all things to this very moment. We're going to look at 3 arguments for this being. These arguments are taught in the Bible, but you don't need the Bible to know them. In fact, you can establish that God exists without any reference to any religious book. The third question, are miracles possible, is important because if miracles are not possible, Christianity can't be true. Because if the resurrection didn't occur, Christianity's false. But I hope to show you tonight that not only are miracles possible, but the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and even atheists are admitting the evidence for this miracle. Then we're going to get to the key question, is the New Testament true? The New Testament doesn't have a prayer if there's no truth, no God, or no miracles. But if truth exists, if God exists, if miracles are possible, then we can see if there's enough evidence, if the New Testament documents are historically reliable enough to let us know if one event from the ancient world took place critical to Christianity, and that event would be the resurrection, right? Because if Jesus rose from the dead, game over, Christianity's true. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, game over, it's false. You might as well sleep in on Sunday and do what you want the rest of the week, because if Jesus hasn't risen from the dead, Christianity is false. As the Apostle Paul himself said in his first letter to the Corinthians, he said, your faith is in vain if Jesus hasn't risen from the dead. Do you realize that Christianity is a world religion, one of the few, if any, that you can actually investigate historically to see if it really is true? So that's what we're going to try and do. And then Austin said we're going to get into some questions later. We're going to do Q&A. That's actually not true. Instead of Q&A, we're going to do all Q, no A. All right? So everyone gets to ask a question, takes all the pressure off me. All right? Now we're going to get to questions later, but we got to start right here at point 1. Does truth exist? You guys ready to go? All right. Whenever you start talking about truth, you always have to start with Jack Nicholson. Right? Because Tom Cruise had him on the witness stand and he said to him, Colonel, I want the truth. And Nicholson said, one guy got it right. Some guy over here. The rest of you, that was really weak. You can't handle the truth. If he said it that way, the movie would have gone nowhere. That's not how he said it. Here's how he said it.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right, let's try it again. I want the truth. Now that felt better, didn't it? Didn't that feel better? Didn't you always want to come to church and yell at Gary or something? You can't handle the truth. Well, you know, there's a lot of people that can't handle the truth. They're saying, you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. Well, if you don't get anything outside of what we talk about here tonight or Wednesday night, what we're about to talk about in the next couple of minutes is, I think, the most important thinking skill that you can learn. And if you get this thinking skill down, half of what you need to know to defend the Christian faith you'll already know. Why? Because this thinking skill will help you discover what is false. And there are so many false statements in our culture today that if you can expose them as false, you can avoid them and concentrate on what is true. And to show you what a dimwit I was 33 years old. I already had a master's degree from George Washington University, and I didn't know what I'm about to tell you right now. I had to go to seminary to learn this, okay? And it's so simple. Once you get this thinking skill down, you're going to become a fearless apologist. Now, and by the way, an apologist is not somebody that says you're sorry. An apologist is someone who's giving evidence for what he or she believes, okay? So here's the thinking skill. Well, I'm going to show it to you by giving you an illustration of using it. If someone were to say to you, there is no truth, you should ask that person a question. What should the question be? Yes, if somebody says there's no truth, you want to say, hey, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. Did I say that right? Can everybody see this is a self-defeating statement? What's a self-defeating statement? A self-defeating statement doesn't meet its own standard. A self-defeating statement violates the law of non-contradiction, one of the fundamental laws of all thought, that says that opposite ideas cannot both be true at the same time and in the same sense. For example, if I were to say I can't speak a word in English, what would you say? You just used English to say it, right? This is a self-defeating statement. And the easiest way to identify self-defeating statements is to turn the claim on itself. That's the thinking skill. You've got to get good at turning the claim on itself. So when people say things, you just want to call a timeout briefly and apply the claim to itself, or turn the claim on itself. So let's do a few more of these. If somebody were to say something like, all truth is relative, you hear that a lot, right? If you turn the claim on itself, what question would you ask back? What would you say? Yes, is that a relative truth? No, this is an absolute truth, right? It's an absolute truth while claiming all truth is relative. It's like when people say there are no absolutes. What are you going to say to them? Is that an absolute? You're absolutely sure, right? Now, in our culture today, it's not said this way very often anymore. This is the way it's often said. There isn't the truth, only my truth. You've probably heard that, right? You've got your truth, I've got my truth. Let's just all get along. You live your truth, I live my truth. It sounds so right. It sounds so Oprah, doesn't it? It sounds like everybody ought to agree with this, right? There's just a problem. When somebody says there isn't the truth, only my truth, if you turn the claim on itself, what question are you going to ask back? This is the interactive portion of the program, okay? You can say this. Is that just your truth or the truth? Right? If this statement up here is just your truth, in other words, it's just your opinion, then why should I believe it, right? But if you're saying that this statement up here is the truth, you just got done telling me there aren't any the truths. Do you see the problem here? This is a the truth statement claiming there are no the truths. I know this is not popular in our culture today, but there's no such thing as my truth or your truth. There's just the truth. In fact, to say you have your own truth, you might as well say you have your own math. Suppose you hire me to do something. You say, Frank, I'll give you $15 an hour. Tell me how many hours you worked, and I'll pay you. So I work 10 hours. I come to you. I go, okay, I work 10 hours at $15 an hour. You owe me $150,000. And you go, what are you talking about? I don't owe you $150,000. I owe you $150. And you go, no, you don't understand. I have my own math, right? What would you say to me? You'd go, you're crazy. That's right. Look, there isn't the truth. There isn't your truth or my truth. There's just the truth. There isn't your math or my math. There's just math. I know that's unpopular today, but that's the truth. Now, sometimes it's actually said this way. It's true for you, but not for me. Well, you know, Christianity may be true for you, but Buddhism's true for me. What do you say to that? Are you guys still here? This is also self-defeating. It's just a little bit more subtle. If you turn the claim on itself, when somebody says, it's true for you but not for me, you can say, hey, is that true for everybody? Is true for you but not for me true for everybody? Because if true for you but not for me is true for everybody, then true for you but not for me can't be true because it's true for everybody. Did I say that right? I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it long enough. But that's because it's self-defeating. It's like saying I can't speak a word in English. Actually, there's a more fun way of dealing with this. If somebody says it's true for you but not for me, say, sure, go try that with your bank teller. Yeah, go to your bank teller and say, look, gas prices are up, all the prices are up. I need some more money. Give me $100,000 out of my account. The bank teller looks at your account and says, I'm sorry, you only have $6.12 in your account. It's easy to get the money. You simply say, that's true for you but not for me. Give me the $100,000. Are you going to get the money? No. If it's true there was only $6.12 in your account, that's true for all people at all times in all places when referring to your account at that time. It's just true. I go to a lot of churches. I normally ask people, do you think Christianity's true? And most people will say yes. And then I'll ask them why. Do you know what answer I get more than any other? Because I have faith. Is that a good answer? Does your faith change whether or not God exists or Jesus rose from the dead? No, your faith doesn't change a thing about those things. I mean, do you have to believe something to make it true? I mean, do you have to believe in gravity to stay on the ground? Do people who don't believe in gravity float away? Hey, look, there's another one. Hey, if you believe, you'll come back. No, that's not the way it works. You say, why is the Bible always talking about faith then? Because there's two kinds of faith. This is a very important distinction. There's belief that, and then there's belief in. Belief that is getting evidence that God exists, that Jesus rose from the dead, that the documents are telling us the truth. All that is apologetics, getting evidence for what you believe. But all the belief that in the world won't get your moral transgressions forgiven. For that, you got to go from belief that to belief in. James, the half-brother of Jesus, who wrote that little book in the New Testament called, you guys are sharp tonight. James says even the demons believe that God exists, but they tremble. They don't want to trust in Jesus. They know that it's true, but they don't trust in him. Because there's a difference between belief that and belief in. Belief that is just of the head. Belief in is not only of the head, but it's of the heart. You can know something's true and still not trust in it. In fact, we know this in relationships, don't we? In fact, when I first met my wife 37 years ago, I got evidence that she would be a good wife, but all the evidence in the world didn't make her my wife. I had to take a step of trust in her to ask her to be my wife. And in a momentary lapse of judgment, she said yes. See? That's the difference between belief that and belief in. Now, most of the time when the Bible's talking about faith, it's talking about the second kind. It's talking about belief in. After you know that Jesus is the Savior, trust in him. But you should have evidence that he's the Savior. So you can be a better ambassador for him when people ask you the question, what is this hope that you have? It's not just, I'm believing without evidence. I've got evidence it's true, and I'm trusting in it. Now, how about this? You hear this a lot. There's no truth in anything but science. Turn the claim on itself. What would you ask somebody who said this? Yeah, is that statement science? Is that a scientific truth? Can you go in the laboratory and prove this claim? No, that's a philosophical claim. You can't prove that in the laboratory. In fact, you can't do science without philosophy. Book I wrote a few years ago is called Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. And we have a chapter in there on science. Here's the title of the chapter. Science doesn't say anything. Scientists do. Now, why am I saying that? Because all data needs to be gathered, and then all data needs to be interpreted. And who does that? Scientists do that. Science doesn't say anything. Did you ever wonder why you get conflicting advice on COVID? You ever wonder why? Look, if scientists have good data and they interpret it properly, you're going to get good advice. If they have good data but don't interpret it properly, you're going to have bad advice. If they've got bad data, it doesn't matter how they interpret it, you're going to get bad advice. If there's a political agenda, oh no, that'll never happen. Are you kidding me? Why do we think that scientists are immune to the same three temptations the rest of us have? What are the same three temptations that can cause any of us to fudge the data or look the other way? Sex, money, and power. That's why the Proverbs talk so much about sex, money, and power. Because those are three good things, but they're so good we'll often take shortcuts to get them. So science doesn't say a word. It's scientists that say things. And sometimes a scientist's philosophical presuppositions will cause them to interpret the data improperly. Or one of those sex, money, or power factors might cause them to interpret the data differently. Now, science is very important, as you all know. It makes our lives a lot more comfortable. But science has nothing to do with the most important things in life. Honey, do you love me? Yeah. Why? I don't know. Let's run some kind of experiment. No! Oh, this is the big one in our culture. You ought not judge. Especially if you're a Christian. Jesus said don't judge. Why are you judging, you hypocrites? All right, let's set Jesus aside for just a second. What's the problem with this statement logically? If somebody says you ought not judge, yeah, well, you're going to say, hey, isn't that a judgment? Or if they say you ought not judge, you might put your hands on your hips and say, then why are you judging me for judging? Now you might say, wait a minute, Frank, didn't Jesus say don't judge? Nope, never said it. Sure he did. He said it in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. All right, I know this is going to sound weird for a second, but it's true. There are no verses in the Bible. There are no verses in the Bible. Do you think when Matthew was writing his biography of Jesus, which we now call a gospel, he said, here's chapter 7, verse 1? No, when were the chapter and verse divisions put in there? About 500 years ago to help us navigate the text. Now, that's a good thing. Why? Because if you didn't have numbers in your Bible, it would be really hard to find your way around, right? Imagine if Pastor Gary got up here one Sunday and you didn't have numbers in your Bible and neither did he, and he said, all right, let's go about 2/3 of the way in. Let's see if we can find the same spot, right? You wouldn't be able to do that, right? I mean, numbers are important, but the problem is we think if it's got a number in front of it, we can make it say whatever we want. You can't do that. You can only maybe do that in Proverbs because that's what those are for. You got to read around the passage. All right, now I'm going to get in trouble with some of you here, but I'm leaving in a couple days, okay? This is why, ladies and gentlemen, Jeremiah 29:11 does not apply to you. You know Jeremiah 29:11, oh, the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you. That was not written to us. It was written to the exiles who went to Babylon 2,600 years ago. Unless you're 2,600 years old and living under Nebuchadnezzar in modern-day Iraq, that passage does not apply to you. It tells you something true about God, but it's not a promise to you. I always ask people that quote Jeremiah 29:11. You know, it's on pillows, it's on birthday cards, it's all over the place. I always ask them, why don't you quote Jeremiah 44:11? Why? What is Jeremiah 44:11 about? Jeremiah 29:11 is the promise God made to people that went to Babylon in the exile. Jeremiah 44:11 is the promise God made to the people that went to Egypt during the exile, and God said, don't go to Egypt. You know what Jeremiah 44:11 says? I will destroy you and all Judah. You don't see that stitched into a pillow. You don't see that on a birthday card. Happy birthday. I will destroy you and all Judah. Jeremiah 44:11. That is so sweet. Thank you, Grandma. No, you don't see that. Why? Because we just selectively pick stuff out of context that we like and we ignore the stuff we don't like. This is why you've got to read around the passage and you've got to read around the judgment passage. What does Jesus say in Matthew 7? He says, judge not, lest you be judged by the same standard you judge others, you be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, you hypocrite, which is a judgment, by the way, you notice that? Take the log out of your own eye first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. Is Jesus telling us not to judge here? No, he's telling us to take the speck out of our brother's eye. That involves making a judgment. He's simply saying, get that problem out of your life first so you can better help your brother So this is not a command not to judge, it's actually a command on how to judge. If you've got that problem, fix it, then go help your brother. But it would be completely ridiculous to say don't make judgments. Why? Number one, it's a judgment itself. Number two, you'd be dead already if you didn't make judgments. You made 100 judgments getting over here tonight. And now you're going, this was a bad judgment. This guy's crazy. Everybody makes judgments. Atheists make judgments. They judge there's no God. They judge Jesus didn't rise from the dead. They judge there's no meaning to life. When you die, you're just going to become worm food. It's hopeless. Have a nice day. These are all judgments. The question isn't whether or not you can make judgments. The question is, are your judgments true? I will say this, though. Jesus did save a very stern rebuke for people who were judgmental. And who were the judgmental ones in his day? The Pharisees. And who were the Pharisees? What was their job? They were the religious and, important, political leaders of Israel. They were on the Sanhedrin, many of them, the Jewish ruling council, to whom Rome delegated much of the political day-to-day authority to. They were the politicians of the day. And Jesus went after these people. Are you telling me Jesus got involved in politics? Yes! And he wasn't so nice doing it. In fact, if you think Jesus was a sweet guy who's never said a bad word about anyone, you have not read John chapter 2, John chapter 8, or Matthew chapter 23. What happens in John chapter 2? Jesus makes a whip and he goes and he jacks people up in the temple. What? Sweet and gentle Jesus did this? Yes. And then in John chapter 8, he's having an argument with these political religious leaders, these Pharisees. He's right in the middle of the argument and he says, your father is the devil. Jesus, you can't say that. That's not very Christ-like. Excuse me, I am Christ. Can you imagine you're having an argument with somebody and you say, your father is the devil? Never try that with a sibling. And then in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus, talking to these same Pharisees, says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Oh, you look great on the outside. You're whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. You go a mile to make a convert, and then once you make them a convert, you make them twice as much a son of hell as you are. How will you avoid being condemned to hell? What? Sweet and gentle Jesus said this? Yes, Jesus was not Barney. Can't we all get along, boys and girls? No! I came to bring a sword. It's going to divide mother and daughter, father and son. Jesus was not Mr. Rogers. Can you say kindness, boys and girls? Look, I mean, he was kind most of the time, but he certainly didn't go around saying this sermon brought to you by the letter E. No, Jesus was tough. In fact, why did they kill him? Number one, he claimed to be God, which was blasphemy to the Jews and sedition to the Romans. And number two, he spoke truth to power, particularly the temple authorities who knew that Jesus was the Messiah. I think Caiaphas knew that. Why? He had seen Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead. He knew it happened. And what does Caiaphas say right there in John chapter 12? It's better that one innocent man die than the whole nation perish. Sex, money, power. I don't want to lose my power. This innocent man needs to die. By the way, I've noticed one other thing about judging. You ever notice that when you compliment somebody, which is a judgment, nobody gets upset? You know, if you say to your best friend, I really love you. You're such a wonderful person. I wish I could be like you. You think your friend's going to say, well, who are you to judge? Right? I've noticed that people don't have a problem with judging. They just have a problem with judgments they don't like. In fact, if you tell somebody something that's true and they get upset with you, you just helped convict them. As Augustine said, we love the truth when it enlightens us. We hate the truth when it convicts us. For those military people here, and by the way, I was in the Navy for 8 years, which stands for never again volunteer yourself. For you military people in here, you always get more flack when you're over the target. If you're telling somebody something that's true and they're mad at you, they're going to be shooting back at you. You're over the target. They don't want their evil deeds exposed. As Jesus said, men love darkness rather than light. So we have to make judgments, but we have to make judgments without being judgmental. In fact, someone put it this way, that evangelism is just one beggar showing another beggar where the food is. Now, we could spend a lot more time going through these self-defeating statements, but we don't have that time. We got to keep moving. So I just want to sum everything up this way. Can everybody see that this statement right here shoots itself? Can everybody see that? And all the other statements we just went through, they shoot themselves, which means if our reasoning is good here, that relativism and postmodernism are false. Why? Because they claim it's true that there is no truth. So you can't get away from truth. Well, actually, you can get away from it temporarily. How? You suppress it. This is what Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1. We suppress the truth and unrighteousness because we want to go our own way. Now, we go to a lot of college campuses, 15 to 20 a year, to present a presentation like this called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. In fact, here's a picture of one we did at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, which loves the Bible about as much as the University of California at Berkeley does, okay? Anyway, when an atheist gets up to the microphone, and we'll have microphones here later if you're an atheist, thank you for being here, but it's not fair of me to ask you a question without me warning you what the question is. So I may ask you this question that I ask people on college campuses, and here's the question. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? I've had atheists stand at that microphone in front of hundreds of people and say, no! No? How's that reasonable? You say you wouldn't believe something if it were true? It's not reasonable. The problem isn't in the head, the problem's in the heart. They don't want it to be true. They don't want there to be a God. Why? Because they want to be God of their own lives. They're not on a truth quest, they're on a happiness quest. And they're just going to believe whatever they think is going to make them happy. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. You can make yourself happy over the short term doing a lot of fun things, but over the long term, it's a disaster. And everyone in this room who's over 40 years old knows what I'm talking about because many of us have tried it ourselves, right? I'm going to do it my way. Yeah, that's not going to work long term. Sorry. If you want contentment, you got to go straight through truth, and Jesus is the truth. So always ask the question, if Christianity were true, give it up for Jesus. That's right. Always ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? If the person hesitates or says no, the problem isn't in the head, the problem's in the heart. Doesn't matter how much evidence you give them. They're not interested. They're looking for God like a criminal's looking for a cop. They don't want it to be true. So, we know that truth exists. The next question, however, is it true that God exists? And I mentioned there are three arguments that we're going to look at for the existence of God. We can't spend a lot of time on these arguments, but a significant amount of time of the entire presentation we will spend on this because this is very important. If it's true that God exists, then we'll see that miracles are possible, and we'll also see that Jesus actually rose from the dead, which means Christianity is true. But we got to deal with this question first. Is it true that God exists? Well, the first argument we're going to briefly look at is the argument from the beginning of the universe known as the cosmological argument. Now, cosmological just comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. And it says if the universe had a beginning, then it must have had a beginner. The second argument is the argument from design known as the teleological argument. Telos is a Greek word meaning design or purpose. And it says if there's design in the universe and design in life, then there must be a designer. Now, there's scientific evidence that you can look at for these two arguments. We'll look at some of it here shortly. The third argument doesn't have any science behind it, yet it's the argument we've all known intuitively since we were very small children. It's more of a philosophical argument. And it's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. It says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one. Like it's wrong to torture babies for fun. Or it's wrong to murder 6 million people in a Holocaust. Or it's wrong to invade a neighboring country without provocation. Then God exists. Why? Because if there is no God, none of those things are really wrong. It's just one person's opinion against another. It's just your opinion against the baby torturer's opinion, or your opinion against Hitler's opinion, or your opinion against Putin's opinion, or whoever. Well, we know that, say, murder is not just a matter of opinion. If that's the case, there must be a standard of rightness that we're obligated to obey, and any deviation from that standard would be what we would call evil. That standard is what all people know to be God's nature. If God exists, there's real right and wrong. If God doesn't exist, there isn't. Now, we'll get to that argument probably Wednesday night, but we got to start right here at the cosmological argument. Now, you got to admit, it was worth coming here tonight just to see God do that. Some of you have said, I've never seen God move. Oh, really? Check this out. Now, this is the argument that many say points back to the big... Now, I know some of you Christians in here are thinking, Frank, we're Christians in here, and we don't believe in the Big Bang. You guys don't believe in the Big Bang? I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. In fact, the evidence for the Big Bang is so good that even atheistic scientists are admitting it. Stephen Hawking, who was probably the most well-known physicist in the world until he died about 5 years ago, put it this way. He saw that almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tried to come up with another explanation other than God. He failed, but he's admitting the data. He's admitting the fact that space, time, and matter literally came into existence. Once there was no space, time, and matter, and then suddenly there was. It wasn't just Hawking. Even agnostic astronomers and cosmologists like Alexander Vilenkin, who teaches at Tufts University, put it this way. He said, with the proof now in place, cosmologists, and by the way, a cosmologist is not someone that puts on your makeup, all right? Cosmologist is someone that studies the universe. Cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Interesting, he uses a couple of words here that are unusual. The first word is the word proof. Why does he use that word? Scientists normally don't use that word because science, by definition, is tentative. Because new data can come in, overturn previous theories. Happens all the time. But you know what Vilenkin says? He says, I see so much evidence pointing toward the fact that there was a beginning that I'm going to say it's a proof. The other interesting word is the word problem. Why is it a problem that there's a cosmic beginning? Because if space, time, and matter had a beginning, if nature had a beginning, what could have caused nature? Not more nature, something beyond nature. Something we would call supernature. Now, we're not going to go through the evidence for this tonight. Why? Number one, we don't have time. Number two, it's all in the book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, chapter 3. And number three, it's not controversial. Even the atheists are admitting it. The only question is, what could have caused space, matter, and time to come into existence? Well, let me just ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if space, matter, and time literally had a beginning out of nothing, what do you think could have caused it? Something that's spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create. You say, why personal? Because to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, someone had to make a choice, and only persons can make choices. Also, the being would have to be intelligent in order to have a mind to make a choice. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? God. You say, how do you know it's the Christian God, Frank? We don't. This could be Allah at this point. This could be some other theistic God. We don't know at this point. But we do have 6 attributes for what could be the God of the Bible. How are we going to discover who this God is? We got to go through the rest of the questions. And when we do go through the rest of the questions, I think we're going to realize that the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,989 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing. We haven't gotten there yet. We could have the biblical God here. We don't know if it's the biblical God, but we'll see as we go further, all right? Now, the second argument is the argument from design, known as the teleological argument. And years ago, I had a couple of debates with Christopher Hitchens. You guys remember Christopher Hitchens? He was a brilliant British atheist who sounded more brilliant than he was because he had a British accent. Anyway, what Hitchens did to his credit was admit that this argument is the hardest to answer for an atheist. And there's two aspects to it. One aspect is that the universe is designed, and the other aspect is that life is designed, you're designed. Let's just take a look at the universe first. This is known as the fine-tuning of the universe. Scientists have discovered in recent decades that the parameters of our universe are so precise that if you were to change any one of, say, a dozen of them, virtually imperceptibly, there would either be no universe or certainly no universe that could support life. In fact, let's start with an atheist admitting this. Again, Stephen Hawking. Here's what he said about the expansion rate of the universe. He said if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. If the expansion rate was that infinitesimally different from the very beginning, none of us would be here. Now, you can't make any sort of evolutionary explanation for this. You can't say, oh, well, the expansion rate just evolved to that point by chance, whatever that means. Why? Because it's one of the initial conditions of the universe. It started right where it needed to start. What could have caused that? Seems to me the same being that created space-time and matter is the same being that fine-tuned the expansion rate to be precisely what it needed to be for us even to exist. Not only that, the gravitational force, if it were altered by more than 1 part in 10 to the 40th power compared to the strong nuclear force, we wouldn't exist. What's 1 part in 10 to the 40th power? That's 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. You say, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. I know, neither can I, so let me give you an illustration. Cover the entire North American continent in dimes, all the way to the moon. That's 238,000 miles. Dimes, all the way to the moon. And then do that on 1 billion other North American continents. Then randomly mark 1 dime in those piles, mix them all together, throw your blindfolded friend in there and say, just pick one at random. The odds that he's going to pick that 1 marked dime is 1 chance in 1 with 40 zeros following it. Is he going to pick that dime? No. He's not going to do it. That's the kind of precision that's necessary for us to exist here on earth. Now, some will say, well, this happened by chance. Ladies and gentlemen, is chance a cause? Does chance cause things? Who caused this? Chance. He was just here. No. Chance is not a cause. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. Chance doesn't do anything. When scientists use the word chance, you know what they mean? We don't know. That's what they mean. Look. Ladies and gentlemen, there's only 2 possible explanations for that value being right where it is. It was either designed to be there or it wasn't. What's more reasonable? Somebody designed it to be there. Otherwise, you got to believe in finding 1 dime by random in 1 billion North American continents in dimes stacked to the moon. Not going to happen. Now, it's not just this is just a couple of about a dozen of these parameters about our universe, but even our solar system appears to be designed with us in mind. Let's take a look at the solar system here for a second. Here we are, 3rd rock from the sun. If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away, we couldn't survive. A little bit closer to, we burn up. A little bit further away, we freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it is That's a lie. It's way too hot here in the summer. I melted when I got off the plane. The axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. Change that slightly, we don't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we don't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us. Change that slightly, we don't exist. If Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we couldn't exist here on Earth. Why? What does Jupiter do for us? Jupiter's gravitational force is so strong that it attracts most of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. In fact, you know these purple marks on Jupiter right here? You know what those are? Those are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter. Because if Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. Saturn does the same thing for us. It attracts meteors to it rather than us. In fact, you want to see the planets? Here they are. Look, there's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto down here. You know, Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet. I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. And what if Pluto identifies as a planet? What then, you bigots? Take a look at this. You can hardly see Pluto. Take a look at this. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. Here's the sun. Jupiter is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. All right, keep an eye on Arcturus. Where's Arcturus now? Way over here. See it? Way over here. That's Antares. That's another star in our galaxy. The sun is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. In fact, if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, Betelgeuse here would be... Look, I don't name the stars, okay? If the Earth was the size of a golf ball, Betelgeuse would be 5 or 6 Empire State Buildings high. The heavens are awesome. And the average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles, and all that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. Now, 30 trillion miles, how far is that? Far. Take you at least 2 tanks of gas in a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles. A number of years ago, my wife and I took our 3 sons when they were much younger to the Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona. If you ever get a chance to go to Tucson, south side of the city, over the hill, they've got this Desert Museum. And if you go there at night, and on a clear night, you can see thousands of stars in the sky. So we're out there this one night, and it was so clear, the guide said, hey, if we look up at 9:03, we'll see the space shuttle in orbit. It could have been the one right over here at Dulles, the one they got sitting out there. I don't know which one was up at the time, but they go, we'll see it. And I go, oh, come on, we're not going to see the space shuttle. It's only 120 feet long. It's 350 miles up. Oh, me of little faith. At 9:03, the guide goes, look. And we look up in the sky about 70 degrees above the horizon. There's an object streaking across the western desert sky relative to us about like this. I mean, it's really cooking. When it got right about here, it disappeared. I don't know whether Scotty beamed it up or what. Actually, what happened was, despite the fact that we were in total darkness, the space shuttle was so high up that the sun was still reflecting off of it. And when it got out of the range of the sun, we couldn't see it anymore. Now, when the space shuttle was in orbit, the space shuttle was traveling at about 18,000 miles an hour. That's 5 miles per second. You got trouble getting to work in the morning? Take the space shuttle. You'll be 5 miles a second. Think about how fast that is. Well, I did a little calculation and try and figure out how long would it take us if we could get in the space shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star an average distance away inside our galaxy, 30 trillion miles. In other words, how long would it take us to go 30 trillion miles if we could go 5 miles per second? How long? A long time. You must be a math major. Yeah. It would take us 201,450 years. That means if we got in the space shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling from our star, the sun, to another star an average distance away in our galaxy, we've been going 5 miles a second for 2,000 years. We would be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We're not going anywhere in space. It took us 9 years to get to Pluto. Now, look, if our solar system was the size of a quarter, and the sun's in the center and Pluto's on the outer rim of the quarter, you know where the next nearest star is? It's 2 football fields away. We're not going anywhere in space. It's too far and it's too dangerous. I mean, even at light speed, 186,000 miles a second, it would take us almost 4 years to get to the next nearest star. But imagine we figure this out. We get to another planetary system. In fact, what I'm about to show you is a little bit disturbing, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. You're a mature crowd. We get to another planetary system. We plant our flag, and then this happens. Beans are not for astronauts, ladies and gentlemen. Now, to show you how analytical my wife is, I showed her that video, and she smiled just a little bit, and she said, "That's illogical. There's no sound in space." You were thinking, weren't you? For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those that fear him, says the psalmist. Well, how high are the heavens above the earth? We've got 30 trillion miles between stars in our galaxy, but what about other galaxies? I mean, how high are the heavens above the earth? Well, the Hubble Space Telescope has helped us discover that. Now you know we have a new telescope up there, the James Webb, but a number of years ago, they trained the Hubble Space Telescope for 11 days exposure time on 1/26 millionth of the sky. What's 1/26 millionth of the sky? Go outside tonight, put a piece of rice on the end of your finger, hold it up. That piece of rice represents about 1/26 millionth of the sky. So they did this for 11 days exposure time. This is called Hubble Ultra Deep Field. You can Google this. This is in the public domain. In fact, I'm going to play you a little video they put together. I don't know if you can see this, but on the bottom of this screen here, these are mountains, okay? And this is the southern hemisphere. I'm going to start this little video, and it's going to show the constellations come up, and then Hubble is going to zoom out to 1/26 millionth of the sky. There is no audio. It's just a bunch of pictures put together in a video. You guys ready? Let's see what Hubble discovered in 1/26 millionth of the sky. There are the constellations. Now here we go. What you're looking at are nearly 10,000 galaxies in 1/26 millionth of the sky. Now you know what the Bible means by the heavens declare the glory of God. Now, how many stars are there in the entire universe? If we have 10,000 galaxies in 1/26 millionth of the sky, how many stars are there in the whole universe? The number of stars in the entire universe are about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches, on all the earth, times 100,000. And to go from one star to another star, going 5 miles a second, will take you over 200,000 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to hear any of you ever again use the word awesome unless you're talking about God or the heavens. Awesome shot, dude. Awesome shirt, dude. Awesome TikTok video. No! What are you going to say for God? In fact, I only read you half the verse a minute ago. Here's the rest of it. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far as he removed our transgressions from us. How has he removed our transgressions from us? He took them upon himself. People are all upset because Jesus says he's the only way. That's not an arbitrary claim, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't say, I'm the only way because I'm God, get over it. The reason he's the only way is because his justice is infinite. How infinite? As high as the heavens are above the earth. But thankfully, his love is infinite as well. So what does he do? If he's going to allow unjust people like you and me into his presence, he's got to somehow punish us. Otherwise, he's not just. What does he decide to do instead? He doesn't punish us. He punishes a substitute in our place. Who's the only perfect human being he can do that to? Himself. So he adds humanity to his deity, comes to earth, allows the creatures that rebelled against him to torture and kill him, so his infinite justice and infinite love could be reconciled at the cross. It's not an arbitrary claim. It's based in the nature of reality. That's why Jesus is the only way. Now, when you look at the heavens and why Jesus had to come, when you look at the heavens, which have stars equivalent to 100,000 earths, sand grains on 100,000 earths, does that make you feel insignificant? It shouldn't. Why? Because as amazing as the heavens are, they're not made in the image of God, but you are. In fact, this is you in the womb at 11 weeks. Question, is this animal, mineral, vegetable, or human? In fact, let's go back even further than 11 weeks. Let's go all the way back to when your mother and your father got together to conceive you. Have you guys had this talk before? I see some young people in here, so I'll try and be discreet. I also see some older people in here, so I'll try and be discreet as well, just in case you've forgotten how this works. When your mother and your father got together to conceive you, your mother unconsciously perfumed her egg to attract your father, and then your father sent the entire population of the United States, 300 million soldiers, toward your mother's egg. And then there was a race, and you won. Don't let anyone ever tell you you're not special. You have blown away anything Michael Phelps has done. I mean, you beat 300 million others. Now, seeing some of you limp in here earlier makes it hard for me to believe you were the fastest soldier in the gene pool, but you were. Now, your soldier was 20 to 30 times smaller than a grain of salt, yet it contained half of the 3.2 billion letter software program, your genome, Your DNA, all the letters in the right order, contained half of that. And your mother's egg was about the size of a period at the end of a sentence in an average book, and it contained the other half of the 3.2 billion letter genome, your software program, your DNA. And when your soldier and your egg came together, a new 100% genetic human being was created. Do you know you have not received any more genetic information from this point till right now? Your genetic information has just duplicated itself. In fact, there were only 4 things separating you from adulthood: time, air, water, and food. Those are the same 4 things that separate a 2-year-old from adulthood. Does this have implications on the abortion issue? Yeah, I think it does. We don't kill the 2-year-old. Why do we kill the unborn child in the womb? Genetically, it's the same. You say, Frank, come on. You can't legislate morality. All right, no extra charge for this, ladies and gentlemen. This is the subject of our first book, creatively titled, Legislating Morality. All laws legislate morality. Every law declares one behavior right and the opposite behavior wrong. You can't think of a law that doesn't legislate morality. The question is, whose morality will be legislated? And when people say, well, don't impose your morality on me, I go, why not? Would that be immoral? See, because you're imposing your morality on me right now. Why do you get to impose ought-nots, but I don't? Actually, there's a better answer when people say, don't impose your morality on me. Than that, you can say this: this isn't my morality. I didn't make this stuff up. I didn't make up the fact that murder's wrong, that abortion's wrong, that rape is wrong, that theft is wrong, that men were made for women and women were made for men, and the best way to perpetuate and stabilize society, which is the reason the government's involved in marriage to begin with, is to legally recognize that man-woman relationship over every other relationship. I didn't make any of this stuff up. This isn't my morality. This isn't your morality. This just happens to be the morality. The one Thomas Jefferson said was self-evident. The one the Apostle Paul said, the Gentiles don't have the law of the law written on their hearts. So if you have a problem with the morality, you don't have a problem with me. I didn't make it up. You have the problem with the Creator upon whose nature this morality is derived. All right, no extra charge for that. Let's go back to this. From this point till right now, a construction project of astonishing complexity began taking place. Cells began multiplying at a rate of 4,000 cells per second. Brain cells began multiplying at a rate of 100,000 cells per second, for most of you anyway. Some cells became brain cells, others lung cells, others heart cells. How did they know how to do this? Nobody knows. Some cells went so far across you to become what they needed to become that it would be equivalent to you today walking across the United States alone. And that construction project continues to this very moment. You just made 4 million new red blood cells. You just made another 4 million new red blood cells. You just made another knock it off. How is this happening? Are you thinking about this? You're going, wait a minute, Frank, time out, I got to concentrate. New red blood cells coming up. No, this is just happening. How is it happening? Aristotle noticed something 2,400 years ago. Of course, he didn't know anything about blood cells, but he did notice that all of nature's going in a direction. For example, do you notice when you properly nourish an acorn, it always goes in the direction of becoming an oak tree? Why doesn't it become an elm tree or a birch tree or a seahorse? You say, well, it's programmed to become an oak tree. Well, who programmed it? And is an acorn conscious? Is an acorn in the ground going, all right, what do I have to do to become an oak tree? No. But if it's properly nourished, it reliably goes in the direction of becoming an oak tree. If it reliably goes in the direction and it doesn't have a mind, there must be an external mind directing it toward an end. That's what Aristotle called the unmoved mover. Thomas Aquinas comes along in the 1200s and he says, this is going to be my 5th way to argue for God. That all of nature's going in a direction. If it's going in a direction, there must be some kind of director, some mind out there that keeps all this going. Now notice, this is not a Big Bang cause way back when. This is a cause every single second of existence. That everything is going in a direction because it's sustained by a mind. In fact, God is to the universe what a band is to music. When the band was up here playing the music, the band was creating and sustaining the music. What happened to the music the second the band stopped playing? Music's over. Same thing is true with God. God creates the universe and the natural laws that govern it, and he creates you, and he sustains the universe and the natural laws that govern it, and he sustains you. If he were to pull his hand away, we'd all go out of existence. This is why the Apostle Paul said, in him, in Jesus, we live and move and have our being. And Christ holds all things together. And the writer of Hebrews says, God sustains all things by his powerful word. So this is not a Big Bang cause. That's one argument for God. This is a sustaining cause every single second of existence. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we can do science. Why can we do science? Because the universe is orderly. It goes in a direction consistently. It has reliable cause and effect. If the universe wasn't like that, we couldn't do science. This is why science needs a being like God, because he sets up the environment by which we can discover orderly cause and effect. Without him, nothing would exist, but we wouldn't have an orderly universe. So, there's a lot more in the books on this, but we've got to go to your questions here in just a minute. Wednesday night, we're going to come back, we're going to do the moral argument, we'll review a little bit what we did here, and then we're going to cover, the moral argument, you saw God move again. Then we're going to cover, are miracles possible and is the New Testament true? Now, if you can't come back Wednesday night, you're probably not saved. No, but if you can't come back Wednesday night, whether or not you can come back, I want you to text the word evidence to this phone number, 855-909-0582, 855-909-0582, because I'm going to send you the entire 362 slide PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format. I've showed you maybe 50 slides tonight. The whole thing is 362 slides, okay? So if you want that and a bunch of other free stuff, just text the word evidence to 855-909-0582. And then on the book table, there's the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist book. There's also a 12-part DVD series that gets into this in a lot more detail. And the brand new book, Hollywood Heroes, How Your Favorite Movies Reveal God. We've noticed that particularly the superhero and fantasy genre movies all borrow from the greatest story ever told. What's the greatest story ever told? Christianity. So Captain America, Iron Man, Harry Potter. Yeah, Harry Potter, believe it or not. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, they're all in this book. So if you have a young person who's into this stuff, you're going to get biblical life lessons, and you're also going to see how the ultimate hero is Jesus. And the reason these movies enthrall us is because we all want to be taken from this place of pain and suffering to a place of bliss. That's what superhero and fantasy movies do. And that's what the story of Christianity actually is, that someone's going to come save us from this. So check all that out on the book table. All right, what we're going to do now is go to Q&A, and we've got some mics set up. And so if we could bring these mics out. And since no one likes to ask the first question, we're going to move right on to the second question. And Austin here has some questions from online, so we may start with there while people are coming up to the mics.
All right, now, listen.
What do we got, Austin?
Dr. Turk, can I just say, first off, that presentation was awesome.
No! Only the heavens and God are...
Yeah,
Thank
right.
you.
Okay, we get it. All right.
Nice try.
But that presentation then was just okay.
Oh, it's just okay. Good.
Yeah. All right, listen, I don't want to take too much of your time because I still want to get Frank Turek out to the table so he can sign books. We have ice cream sandwiches as well. Let's go 20 minutes to 8:50 of questions. So feel free to come to the live mics. I also have some questions that you've already texted in. So I'm going to get rolling with some of these questions, Dr. Turek.
All right.
These two questions are kind of similar. The first question is this: how do we talk to smarter or more intellectual families and friends about the issue of atheism? Someone else says, I've watched you debate very knowledgeable atheists on YouTube. I'm just a regular guy. What hope do I have that I can convince any of my atheistic friends that there is a God?
You don't have to convince them, you just have to ask them questions. So there are 3 questions you want to get used to using. By the way, these are in our app, the Cross-Examined app, 2 words in the App Store. First question when somebody says something, like let me give you an example. Suppose someone says, well, I can't believe the Bible because it's been changed throughout the centuries. First question you want to ask is, what do you mean by that? What do you mean it's been changed throughout the centuries? Because I've noticed that people really have believed a slogan and they don't have any evidence for this slogan. They just heard it, but they don't have any evidence for it. So you say, what do you mean by that? To figure out if they know what they're talking about. Second question is, how did you come to that conclusion? Like, why do you think that's true? Give me some evidence for your position. The third question is, have you ever considered, and then you fill in the blank, because a lot of people think the Bible's been changed throughout the centuries because it got to us like the telephone game, right? I tell you something, you tell him something, it goes all the way around the room, it's all gibberish by the time it gets over here, right? That's not how we got the Bible. So you might say, have you ever considered that the Bible was not composed like the telephone game? The Bible was composed when eyewitnesses or people that knew eyewitnesses wrote it down, and then so many of these manuscripts were copied and recopied so we could reconstruct the original with 99.5% accuracy. So the third question, have you ever considered, is your way of providing evidence back. Now there's a book that my friend Greg Kokel wrote on this. It's called Tactics, and it talks about questions you can ask. Are questions hard to ask? No. Questions are hard to answer. So if someone's smarter than you, you just keep asking them questions until they realize they can't even support their own position. By the way, these 3 questions, ladies and gentlemen, what do you mean by that? How'd you come to that conclusion? Have you ever considered? Are questions you can use in any environment. So parents, you can use these with your kids. Like suppose your son calls you one night and says, Dad, I'm not going to be home by 11 like you wanted me to. Don't panic. First question, what do you mean by that? Second question, or how did you come to that conclusion, right? Third question, have you ever considered if you're not home by 11, you're grounded for 2 weeks? Right? Be right home, Dad. By the way, husbands, never ever use these questions on your wives. Okay? Because if she calls you an idiot, don't say, what do you mean by that? Right? How'd you come to that conclusion? Because my wife is going to have a list 37 years long. Let's start over here. Yes, sir. What's your name?
Great. Good evening. Dan Givens.
Dan?
Dan,
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yes, it's an honor to meet you. How do you deal with finding the balance between the asking questions, like our brother Greg says, with using the questions, controlling the conversation, and then being authoritative? In other words, when somebody cannot think that you're saying the right thing because you seem like you're unsure. You don't know what you're talking about. So they don't listen because, you don't know what he's talking about. So how do you find the balance between that with using, for example, the Columbo method?
Right, that's from the Tactics book.
Right, but being authoritative and knowing that, hey, you know what you're talking about. So how do you form that balance?
Well, I think that's going to be personality driven as to, how a person comes across. You want to be confident but humble at the same time. Yeah, you could be wrong. You want to be open to, maybe there's a piece of evidence I haven't heard. If you have it, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so you might want to say that. You might want to say things like, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think if you study this long enough, you're going to realize it's not the atheists that have a good case, it's the Christians that have a good case, and it's the atheist that has to have all the faith. And I think one way you can clear away a lot of the objections is to ask the question I mentioned earlier, and that is, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? Because I think the person's going to hesitate or say no. I've noticed that a lot of times, probably 90% of the time, the issue is not intellectual, the issue's volitional. They don't want it to be true. Great. They're running. They're running from God. So I think you can be confident and humble at the same time and just be open. Say, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a different perspective, let me know and back it up.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Yes, sir.
Something that I think of is the college demographic that you've talked to a lot. So the one question I have is, in your time going to school campuses, you've probably already touched on this, but is there a statement or question that makes them re-question or think of their stance on Christianity that might lead into better conversation with that?
You're talking about an atheist?
Yeah, someone who's not a firm believer.
I still think the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? Or if you want to take Christianity out of it, you could say, if Jesus rose from the dead to prove he was God, would you follow him? And see what he says. I think that clears the decks of all other objections. They're going to have to be honest. And Jesus said, if you seek, you will find. If people are truly seeking him, they will find him, because he sought us first. He's come after us, and his Holy Spirit has come after us first. But I think a lot of people are resistant. And it could be because of Christianity, that they've been wronged by a Christian. They don't like what they see on so-called Christian TV. They conflate Christianity with a politician or a political stance they don't like. And here's what you can say to somebody who has that problem. You can say, when somebody plays Beethoven poorly, who do you blame? You don't blame Beethoven. You blame the player. So when somebody plays Christ poorly, who do you blame? You don't blame Christ. You blame the people that play Christ. And none of us as Christians play Christ perfectly. We're all fallen. If we weren't fallen, we wouldn't need a Savior. In fact, I said to Christopher Hitchens in one of our debates, I said, Christopher, I'm a hypocrite. I can't live up to what Jesus said. But if I could, I wouldn't need him. And so when people tell me I can't go to church because there's too many hypocrites down there, I always say, come on down, pal. We got room for one more. I mean, the church is a hospital for sinners. It's not a country club for saints. So, newsflash, Christianity is not Christians. Christianity is Jesus. So keep your eyes on Jesus. Don't let somebody who's imperfect and immoral get in your way of eternity. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'm most of my discussions about Christianity and all that this is very useful for are in a school setting, and with high schoolers, their attention spans are extremely short. So all these one-liners, very useful. One in particular, one argument that I'm trying to figure out relates to the morality one.
Yeah.
And I mean, this entire presentation, all the other points can reaffirm it and everything, but I only have like 30 seconds when I sit down at lunch and they ask me this question. So it's about the, I've heard people say that evolution will explain morality, like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, like our species is automatically supposed to help each other, and that's why like we have all this program.
Okay, yeah, there's two things going on here on the moral argument, and we'll talk about this Wednesday night, but people are confusing, this is going to sound technical for a minute, epistemology and ontology. Epistemology is how you know something, but ontology is why the thing you know actually exists, okay? So if you say to an atheist, murder isn't wrong unless God exists, they'll say, well, I know murder's wrong. Well, of course you know murder's wrong, but you can't explain why murder is wrong if there is no God. You can't justify it. You can explain the epistemological aspect of it, but not the ontological aspect of it. Where does this moral obligation come from that we ought not murder people? What makes life valuable if there is no God? Nothing. That's the problem. You know, outside every road here, there is a speed limit, right? You can see right outside here, it might say 35 miles an hour. You can know the speed limit and deny that there was someone behind that speed limit. You can know it, but the reason there's a speed limit sign is because there's some authority that put that sign up, right? What we're talking about as Christians is not whether you can read the sign. We all agree you can. We're saying the only thing that makes sense for universal moral obligation, for universal morality, is a standard that we're obligated to obey, and that standard can only be God's nature. Evolution can't give you that. Evolution is a biological process that has no authority to tell you what to do. Doesn't have any authority to tell anyone what to do. So evolution does not help their problem. And what these people wind up doing is they smuggle a moral law in to their system. So they'll say, well, evolution has taught me to cooperate so I can and they can live a better life. Time out. What do you mean by better? Now you've imported a standard. Oh, it's human flourishing. Why is human flourishing a good thing? Why not roach flourishing? Or why not Nazi flourishing rather than Allied flourishing? See, you're presupposing a standard and you're importing that standard into the system if you say evolution is our standard. And as you know, evolution changes, supposedly changes. So if things change, does that mean one day rape is going to be considered a good thing? I mean, if survival is our goal, if that's what evolution tells us, then should we rape to survive? There's so many problems with the evolutionary account of morality that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Everybody's questions are broad and great. I have a very narrow one, and maybe just give me a wave off if it's not the right time. Dark matter, dark energy. Do you use that as part of your instruction on this? Because these essentially say, and I'll oversimplify, that the vast expanse of the universe we can't see and we don't understand, like to the 90-95 percentile, which to me says, gosh, we have somewhat of a grasp of just a tiny fraction of it when you consider dark matter, dark energy. I'm just wondering if that's something you...
Well, dark energy is a mystery to scientists. Somehow it is accelerating the expansion of our universe. And the cosmological constant, which is a measure of this expansion, is fine-tuned to 1 in 10 to the 120th power, which is even more mind-boggling than the dimes to the moon illustration we gave earlier. So yeah, there's a lot we don't know, but what we do know is there was a beginning. We know it scientifically and we know it philosophically. In fact, let me give a philosophical reason. We know that if we can just spend a minute here on this, because this is interesting with regard to the beginning of time.
Everybody probably wants to kill me now, but go ahead.
What's that? Regardless of dark energy and things we don't know about our universe, take a look at this for a second right here. Here's today, the present. Here's the past, like there's yesterday, there's the day before yesterday, there's last week. Let's say we don't know how far this timeline goes to the left. We don't know when there or if there was a beginning. The question is, could this timeline be infinite into the past? And the answer is no. Why? Because if it were infinite into the past, we'd never get to, there's dark energy right there. We'd never get to today. So we know from philosophy that time had a beginning, because you can't have an infinite number of days before today. If there were an infinite number of days before today, today never would have gotten here, because you'd always have to live an infinite number of days before you got to this one. This can definitely give you intellectual constipation, right? So if that's the case, it's called the Kalam cosmological argument. If that's the case, whatever created time must be timeless outside of time. And this is one way to answer the question, who made God? No one made God, because if you're timeless, do you have a beginning? No, you didn't have a beginning. You're the first cause. You're the uncaused first cause. So the dark energy is a mystery, but it doesn't change our conclusion as to whether or not this universe had a beginning.
Right. Has it introduced any humility into those scientists who are atheistic in your experience? Have any of them said, wow, this whole dark energy, dark matter thing, I really need to rethink my fundamental assumptions?
Well, it's not just dark energy and dark matter, but the fine-tuning argument we went through caused Fred Hoyle, who was a big opponent of the Big Bang cosmology, wanted the steady state theory to be true, that the universe was eternal, and was an atheist. He said this: a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics and biology, and there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you okay extending our time to 9 o'clock?
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll
Yeah,
call
whatever
it.
you guys
Okay,
wanna
so
do.
that
Yeah.
gives us 15 minutes. If you have to leave, you can leave. Part 2 is Wednesday night. We'll also have more times for questions. But let's go another 15 minutes.
We just don't have infinite time.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
But go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, it's fine.
Go.
As long as you want to go.
Next question.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
So I suppose the question I have is, I'm recently married as of last June, and it just seems to be a really sad reality that we're living in now where, growing up as a kid, I'm only 25 years old, so it's really sad to say that even in, the years that I've been alive, I've gone from a world where, atheists, Christians, Muslims, and everyone in between can at least accept some objective standards, objective realities. We could at least have some sense of what is right, what's wrong, etc. So I guess my main question is the postmodernist relativist movement a rejection of accountability, truth, or both? And furthermore, why are more and more people seemingly in the last 10 years or so so fearful of accepting that which is objectively true? What do you think triggered that?
Well, one of the problems, it's a blessing and a curse. The glowing rectangle that we all have, the phone, makes it seem like there is no truth because you have access to everyone's opinion right on your phone. And people can argue a point back and forth ad infinitum, and it causes you to think, well, there's no certainty here. Do you know one of the problems with social media? It almost requires you to be an expert on everything if you're going to participate, right? People expect you to make a statement about something that happens in society. Why didn't you say anything about this? I don't know enough about it. I don't know, right? Silence is violence. What? I don't even know who to believe anymore, right? Honestly, I don't know who to believe on COVID. I don't. There's so much misinformation. Some of it's coming from our government. I don't know who to believe anymore. So it causes people to say, well, there's no truth. But of course, when they say that, that's a true statement, isn't it? Of course there's truth. So I think the proliferation of the internet, while it does have a lot of positives, it's also created a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty in people's minds. That's why I think we got to get back to the essentials and discover if Christianity is true, then everything else changes. C.S. Lewis famously said that Christianity is either of infinite importance or of no importance. The one thing it can't be is moderately important. Right? Because if there is a God who came to save us and bring us into eternity, what could be more important than that? What could be more important than eternity? Nothing. But if he didn't, it's irrelevant. But it can't be moderately important. So I think that's one of the biggest factors, is just the proliferation of information that people tend to think, well, there's no certainty in any of this.
And then I guess lastly to that, what can we as Christians, more so than just as Americans in general, do